This segment is sponsored by the Richmond Sentinel, providing news, entertainment, and human interest stories in print and online. It is one of the most popular sports on the planet, depending on what poll you might look at. It is always second or third behind, of course, soccer, or as the rest of the world calls it, football. I'm talking about the game of cricket. It has billions of fans, which leads us to our next guest. She is an Australian commentator, sports presenter, and TV personality. She's not coming to us from Australia, but she's coming to us from Delhi in India, where she is working on the Delhi Premiership League, domestic league for cricket. It is a great pleasure to welcome for the first time, Grace Hayden. Welcome, Grace, from a far, far, far away.
Hello, how's it going? It's so nice to be here. Yes, from Delhi, very, very far away from you right now, but it is really the heartbeat of cricket, I would say. I couldn't get closer to the core of where it all happens, and that is India. So I'm here for the next 30 days working on the Delhi Premier League, so it's going to be an action-packed schedule. I've got 2 games per day, but then I've also got this great podcast which is coming out.
Yeah, I want to talk. Let's start with the podcast, Game On with Grace. It debuted on Willow, and for people that may not know Willow and are also big fans of cricket, Willow is the premier streaming service in North America for cricket. One of the things I liked about your podcast, Grace, and I listened to the premiere episode with cricket legend Adam Gilchrist, I can really relate to the fact that when I get someone like you or another guest on for the television version of our show, I got limited time. Whereas when you could sit down and talk to somebody in a podcast or online, it allows for a longer conversation, which gives it more of a 2 people having a coffee or a beer, and the conversation can flow for however long you want it to flow. Tell us a bit about what people can expect from your new podcast, as I said, on Willow, called Game On with Grace.
You're so right. I feel podcasts really give you that opportunity to connect. And for me, that first episode with Gilly was such a full circle moment, because obviously Dad for me is Matthew Hayden, and these two played together and they had such a rich history, and I guess I get to see that lens, and I've always got to see that lens behind the dressing room, I would say. So to have that conversation with him as my very first episode felt really surreal and special, and made me feel so lucky to, 1, have that relationship, but 2, to be able to share some untold stories and I guess connect over similarities in our lives that we've shared. Obviously, I spoke in this podcast about how special my mum played as a role in my family growing up. She was really the rock of our entire ocean, I would say, of a family. Dad was away for maybe 11 months of the year, and she really kept us centered. So I guess for me, this podcast is all about bringing you the untold stories of athletes, artists, of just connecting people with who you might see on the screen, on the cricket pitch, on the wherever, really, and just unpack them as a human being. Because I think people forget that outside of the people that they love and adore and admire for what they are so talented at, there's real people behind that. They have real passions. They may love to cook. They may love to be in the great outdoors. Whatever that might be, there's a unique person, and I want to get to know every single part about that and connect with cricket, because it's such a global sport now, and I feel like it's expanding by the second, and it's just got such a large following base. And I just have always adored watching the game. I've had great connection with it, being the daughter of who I am, but obviously now I get to work in the industry now too, yapping away about it in different tournaments. So yeah, such a full circle moment, and I'm super excited to just connect with a bunch of different people, not just from cricket, but from all the sports and just industries that we know and love, and get to know the real people behind what we all see and admire.
Yeah, Grace, you mentioned your father, Matthew Hayden. For our viewers at home, this is like being the daughter of Wayne Gretzky in terms of hockey. Her father, part of that golden era of cricket in the 2000s. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, because it's full circle for me where you're involved, because we're looking at a photo right now of me interviewing your father back in Brisbane in 2011. You really do bring something different to the game, because, as you said, you grew up around this sport. You had a front row seat, which gives you a whole other perspective now as a young adult to be able to talk to people about cricket, many of whom you probably had met many times. So there's more a familiar setting for you and for them.
Totally. Isn't that crazy? I must say that you were interviewing my dad in 2011 and now here we are. Life is just funny sometimes, hey? And I feel that so many occasions, as you just said, that in the cricketing world, I am able to do that because growing up, every stadium around the world, you think of any iconic stadium that's a cricket stadium, that was my playground growing up.
Hey, I gotta ask you, talk about your relationship with Willow TV. As I mentioned off the top, the tops for streaming of cricket in our part of the world, Canada and the US. Talk a bit about your relationship with them.
Well, Todd came to me earlier in the year and he expressed interest in creating this podcast with me, as it's their first exclusive podcast that people can consume on Willow TV, but then obviously across Spotify and whatever you want to watch your podcasts on. But it's such an exciting partnership. Obviously, cricket is growing so much in the US and Canada. I mean, I did a World Cup in the US last year, and it was so funny when I rocked up to New York Airport, one of the biggest airports, right, in the US, and this customs guy was like, "Oh, what are you here for?" And I said, "Oh, you know, the cricket." And he goes, "Oh, you know, that World Cup cricket thing." And I'm like, wow, okay, this is really weird. The fact that someone in customs in New York knows what cricket is, it just gave me the impression. The tournament last year as well in Canada called GT20, and it was so much fun. It was actually quite a packed ground as well. Everyone was really into it, and you know, not just the people that you would expect to come along to games. It was just here, there, everywhere. People coming in, watching, what curious more so than anything of actually knowing the game in Canada. But yeah, it was a pretty surreal experience, and it's super exciting to do it with Willow TV. I think they're really making waves in the US and Canada market, and yeah, I'm really over the moon. Their first podcast and exclusive platform.
Hey, it's been great to have you. The new podcast is Game On with Grace. Grace, I have no idea what time it is in Delhi right now. It's late morning where we are. But I want to thank you for joining us because we actually have done a lot of Australian segments, so it's great to include you in that category. Grace Hayden, look for the new podcast on Willow TV. It's Game On with Grace. You can find that on that and wherever you find your podcast. Grace, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in Canada with cricket very soon.
Thanks so much.
This segment was sponsored by the Richmond Sentinel, providing news, entertainment, and human interest stories in print and online.